In this video, I will demonstrate how to identify the central argument of a text by using a newspaper article. Identifying the central argument in a text is done by careful and objective reading. If you're an experienced reader and are used to quickly spot the main idea, then this video is probably not for you. This demo is aimed at those who are just starting their journey into critical thinking and need some initial guiding steps. The first step you should take is to read through the text and get a general sense of the topic. Once you've done that, it's time to look at the text more closely. Skimming through the article, I will make some notes under each paragraph. The objective here is to get the idea of the whole text, trying to figure out what the issue is and what is the author trying to convince me of, their position or the argument's conclusion. I proceed by summarizing and rephrasing the author's points within each paragraph. This should help me gain some clarity and see beneath the surface. While doing this, I try to keep an open mind and to suspend judgment. At this point, I need to silence my own opinions about the topic and listen with open intent to what the author is conveying. The article has 7 paragraphs. Let's take a look at the first one. So far, discussions of a coronavirus exit strategy have mainly focused on the steps that could bring an end to the lockdown. In the short term, both in the UK and elsewhere, there is nothing more desirable than letting people resume their lives once it is safe to do so. Okay, so the text begins with the idea that the most desirable thing right now is to let people resume their lives. Let's move to the next paragraph. But the speed of the return to normal is not the only thing that matters. The manner in which the world's leaders manage the colossal economic and political shocks caused by the virus is also of the utmost importance. And at the top of their list of priorities, alongside human welfare, must be the biosphere and its future. So other things matter as well, such as the way in which the world leaders manage the economic and political crisis. And the list of priorities alongside human welfare should also include the biosphere and its future. Okay, so this seems to be a hint to the central idea of this text. But let's take a look at the next one. It's too soon to say with any confidence what impact coronavirus will have on the climate emergency. The brakes placed on economic activities of many kinds worldwide have led to carbon emission cuts that would previously have been unthinkable. 18% in China between February and March, between 40 and 60% over recent weeks in Europe. Habits and behaviors once regarded as sacrosanct have been turned on their heads. Road traffic in the UK has fallen by 70%. Global air traffic has halved. Meanwhile, a much-needed spotlight has been thrown on humans' troubling relationship to wildlife, with some experts arguing that the degradation of the natural world and exploitation of other species is among the pandemic's causes. The author states that it's not known with certainty what total impact the virus will have, but so far the impact seems great. A few examples are provided to support this. Carbon emission cuts, such as 18% in China between February and March, and between 40 and 60% in the recent weeks in Europe. Road traffic fallen by 70% in UK, global air traffic halved, and some experts argue that the causes of the pandemic have to do with exploitation of other species. Moving on to the next paragraph. In human terms, the economic contraction precipitated by the virus and predicted by the World Bank to lead to a severe depression is sure to be brutal. No one, and least of all an elected government, would have chosen to limit emissions in this way. But if further savage waves of destruction to people's livelihoods are to be avoided, rather than simply stored up or ignored up until they become unignorable, just as coronavirus was, every possible effort must now be made to ensure that the recovery, when it comes, is as green as possible, that any and every stimulus package is directed towards renewable energy and zero or low carbon infrastructure and transport. Okay, so this seems to be the central paragraph. The author's position here is stated quite clearly. Although the economic consequences of the pandemic will be brutal, if we are to avoid future savage waves of destruction to people's livelihoods, all efforts must be made now for a green recovery, with all stimulus packages directed towards renewable energy and zero or low carbon infrastructure and transport. So the author is proposing an ecological approach of coming out of the lockdown. Let's see if the next paragraphs are supporting this central idea. The urgency and desperation surrounding all such efforts are likely to militate against progressive measures. Already, governments are coming under huge pressure to bail out oil and gas companies. In the US and Canada, this has already begun. But while in the short term, the low oil price, which is also the result of a price war being waged by Saudi Arabia and Russia, could have the damaging effect of making oil more competitive against renewables, plunging demand and turmoil in the industry provide an opportunity that must be seized by all who oppose the continued dominance of fossil fuels. To me, this paragraph is suggesting that this effort towards green recovery is already potentially undermined, with governments coming under pressure to bail out oil and gas companies. And some examples are offered, US and Canada. The example of oil is continued in this paragraph. Due to low prices, oil becomes more competitive. But since there is a plunging demand, the authors suggest that this opportunity must be seized by all those who oppose the continued dominance of fossil fuels. So does the author mean central policies and governments by using the phrase all those who oppose here? I'm not sure, but it seems that the main position for a policy of green recovery is reinforced in this paragraph. Let's move on. There are other questions besides the future of oil that the crisis has opened up in unexpected ways. Huge political shifts are underway, with fiscally conservative governments such as Boris Johnson's intervening in economies to an unprecedented extent. What was once impossible, socialist, reckless, now turns out not to be at all. Could the renewed shock of human vulnerability in the face of COVID-19 make way for an increased willingness to face other perils, climate chaos among them? Here, the author suggests that this could be a time for incredible changes. A comparison is made the way the UK Conservative government have adopted policies of interventionism, seen by them as socialist or reckless before. Similarly, other impossibilities could become real as well, a willingness to tackle the climate chaos. Let's move on to the final paragraph. Impossible to say at this stage, perhaps. Certainly not without a fight against all those who will promote a return to business. And emissions, as usual. But with the postponement of crucial UN biodiversity and climate conferences, it has never been more important to keep up the pressure. There is no exit strategy from our planet. So this is the final paragraph, reinforcing the author's position and the urgency of the matter. It's a recognition that the environment protection cannot happen without a fight against those who promote a return to business and emissions as usual. And a striking final warning, there is no exit strategy from our planet. I have now summarized and rephrased the author's points within each paragraph. So it's now time to look through the whole text again and see the big picture and how the different supporting paragraphs are linking back into the main central idea. So to summarize, the steps I took were: 1. Read the whole text to get a general sense of the topic and author's position. 2. Separate the text in logical chunks. Sometimes this could be paragraphs, other times groups of paragraphs. 3. Summarize and rephrase the author's points within each paragraph or groups of paragraphs. 4. Look through the whole text again and see the big picture, how the different supporting paragraphs are linking into the main central idea. And 4 bonus tips. Keep an open mind. Don't let your personal feelings about the topic distract you from what the author is trying to convey. Try to suspend all judgment. You will get a chance to analyze whether the argument made for the central idea is valid, but for now, being as open as possible will enable you to grasp faster the points being made.